Okay, here we go. It's a well-oiled machine here. It's early in the morning. I'm on my third cup, and I don't even know what time it is. It's early. So a friend of mine last night sent me a link to a Rick Beato video that I guess just came out. I'm assuming that you know who Rick Beato is. So I'm just going to go from there. It was What the F about music, whatever his title was. He touched on some points I just want to go over because I've talked about these with friends of mine and thought about these type of things all the time. And I thought he had some points, some good points. And I thought he was a little off the mark here and there. So here we go. He talks about the cause and effect. He gets a little bit into autotune. I'll get into that. He started off kind of on an autotune rant, and it kind of connects with the editing thing. He talks about quantizing, which we've been kind of discussing a lot lately. He's talking about moving drum parts around, moving live drummers around, like little parts of their performance, and the cause and effect that happens in that when you move a snare drum a little bit, then all of a sudden the kick before or after that sounds later early. The next snare drum might sound later early compared to this one that you just moved perfectly to the grid. And then you get into a whole chasing the tail kind of thing, you know. We've all been down that road. I know I have, with different productions that I've been involved with, whether it was something I was producing or someone else was producing, or I was just mixing and found problems or things that were problematic. So I thought, like, well, maybe if I move that a little bit, it'll straighten things. It'll fix that. It might. Inevitably, it just causes something to feel unnatural with regards to real players. So the cause and effect of editing, I think he was on the mark with that, in that he explained that pretty well. It's true. And the same goes for tuning vocals, so to speak. And I was an early tuner, so to speak. I used to do the bit with auto-tune where you would have to go into the graphic. There was the auto side and then the graphic side, and you'd have to record in the piece that you wanted to tune and then manually draw the pitch and then render that. It was just insanity. But I always took the approach of tuning that way, whereas like if someone was like a little sharp at the top of a run or a little flat at the end of a run, I would just fix that little part, not the note slide up or the note slide down, because first of all, autotune didn't really like Antares didn't really handle that all that well back when it first sort of came around. It got a little bit better, but it creates that whole nightmare of cause and effect. And that is when you tune one thing, one note, the note before it and the note after it is now going to sound different in relative pitch to where you're at. I'm hoping some of you know this, but I can't assume that all of you do. The big question I always have with tuning and or timing correction is, especially tuning, who is asking for a vocal to be tuned? It's always the insecure artist or the artist that feels as though, wow, I don't think that's perfectly in tune. Can you tune that for me? Then there's the producer. Hey, can you tune that vocal? Or I tuned all the vocals So now they're all perfectly in tune. And then it even slips into the A&R and the record label people. Well, I know you tuned all the vocals, or did you tune all the vocals? You know who never asks for the vocals to be tuned, so to speak? The listener, the audience. I've never played a track for anyone who was just a listener who said to me, oh, thank God that vocal is tuned to the point where it's like, you know, there is not one note off of the scale. That's my rant on the first part of it. Then he gets into, this is where I start disagreeing with him. Spoiler alert. He says, he's talking about drum samples, or talking about drums, and that it's very difficult to mic a drum set, to record a drum set. It's expensive. You need a lot of microphones. You need a real studio. You need, I'm paraphrasing a lot of his stuff right there, but you get the gist of it. And then he said, you know, people ask, like, why do you bother doing that? You can just trigger drum samples from superior drums or addictive drums or Slate. And his answer to that is like, where do you think drum samples come from? These people that record them real well. I have a different take on that, in that especially for a lot of recording engineers and a lot of studios out there that aren't prepared for doing ultra competitive, high level drum recording. There are these guys in, let's just say, Sweden, I think is where Addictive Drums is put together. These guys spend weeks, if not months, recording the drums 9 million different kinds of ways, with apparently top-level microphones, exquisitely tuned, beautiful vintage kits and modern kits, and they're obviously recorded in a great room because there's all kinds of options as far as ambience and non-ambience. My thought is on that, and I'm a recording engineer by trade also. Do you really think you're going to outdo what they did in months of recording those drums in your 3-hour throw up a drum kit that just came out of a guy's car, mic it up, have him play it and record it, and it's just going to be some miraculous drum sound that like no one's ever heard. First of all, we've heard every drum sound that there is and will ever be. I don't think there's anything new coming down the pike. There's just nuances, and I disagree completely with Rick on this, in that you can get infinite possibilities out of the modern technology that affords. Get a good performance. Maybe use the overheads or the cymbals and the ambience of the kit, but you can enhance those drums. And we've been doing it now since like the 80s. We've been enhancing drums with samples. Like Bob Clearmountain was triggering kicks and snares in 1983. Somebody's texting me. Anyway, then he says it's difficult to get a good guitar sound. You have to have amplifiers and microphones and this. But it's not difficult anymore because you can use, and everyone's using amp modelers. And that takes no skill or creativity. He actually said that. And first of all, okay, does it take any skill to dial up a preset? No. Does it take skill to play the guitar with that preset into a track and make it work and find something that works in the track that actually fills a need that you're looking for? yes, it does take skill. And also, on the creativity part, how is there no creativity in using an amp modeler? You can tweak till the cows come home, as opposed to, what's the creativity on miking a 412 speaker or a 112 speaker with a 57? Okay, move the microphone a little bit here, a little bit there. Ooh, there's that creativity, my friend. Or blending two different microphones. You can do all that with the modelers. I'm not anti-modeler. I think I covered that. I will get in. This is like a. You could tell I'm fired up. Maybe I should chill. Got a couple of comments from some of the previous videos. I kind of scroll through them and cherry pick a few. One guy asked. He asked basically about vinyl. He said vinyl crimes aren't new. I remember the initial pressing of Heart album sounded terrible, like they ran a CD through a low shelf and called it a day. I think that listen, there are really cheap ways of going about making vinyl. There's cheap vinyl itself, and there are low budget, or let's just say, yeah, low budget manufacturing plants that are stamping these things out. And, you know, the proverbial hipster who just bought the 70s hi-fi setup is going and buying vinyl and putting it on and thinking he's getting like the same vinyl from 1974. I don't know about that. I think maybe if you're really careful, or if you look into what the source is, but if you're just buying vinyl here and there, yeah, you're going to wind up, as with anything, even CDs, the manufacturing plants had an effect on the sound. What are you hearing? No? I'm wondering what kind of tools did you use back to make drums sound fatter? I'm going to get into that in another video, because this one I feel like I kind of went off enough and I'm kind of shot. One more RZA thing. This is kind of funny if you made it this far. I told you about that month that I spent with RZA every day, 6 or 7 days a week from what I remember. And so that wrapped up. I don't know what happened with all that music, to be honest with you. And that was the case with a lot of 90s. I mean, it still happens today, but there were hundreds, if not thousands, of tracks I worked on that never saw the light of day. I mean, acts get dropped, labels shift their plan, acts decide they don't want to use certain songs. So, like, I would say that myself and even any of my friends that were in that game hardcore back then will admit that, like, I mean, less than half of what we worked on was released. It was sort of frustrating, because you're like, man, we just did how many days on that record, and they just got dropped, or she just got dumped, or they put her. If you ever heard that the project was put on pause, you knew it was over. But the RZA thing was funny, was that we go through this whole month. Basically, it was me and him just by ourselves the whole time. Maybe then after that, a couple weeks had passed, and I'm in another studio working with Nori, N-O-R-E. I don't remember who else was there. But anyway, who comes walking in to visit? I think they actually had him do a verse. Was the RZA. RZA comes walking in, and you know, he's like saying hi to everybody, and he looks over at me and he goes, I said, "Hey, RZA, what's up?" He goes, "Ah, my dog," right? And I looked at him and I was like, "You don't know my name, do you?" And he goes, nah,